We've been putting this up on the board, as everybody gathers, for the last 3 years. Nothing's changed. That is our manifesto, that is our founding affidavit, and that is why we're doing what we're doing. And in the world, cannabis prohibition is on the tip of everybody's tongues. It's almost over. It's almost over. We've got a lot of work to do here, but it is almost over. I can feel it in the blood. I didn't used to, but now I do. The worldwide laws that prohibit the use of these plants is just based on, initially, racism and ignorance. Those two words ring true for the 1992 Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act. It was based on racism right from the start because of those guys. The very first laws to prohibit the use of a cannabis plant were against these people in the late 19th century in Durban. And it was prohibited on the grounds of one English army officer. He decided that there were 7 different types of Dagga insanity. And he wrote them all down, from being a little bit out there to dribbling on the couch, stages 1 to 7. It was perceived that the plant made them lazy, indolent, and not fit for the purpose for which they were brought to the colony. So as you know, a lot of people use cannabis and it slows them down. But what the imperialists didn't figure out was it would slow them down enough to work for 20 hours a day. And if you were working in a sugarcane field in northern Natal, it would be really nice to have a joint at this point because it would take the edge off a very mundane task. And that's what the colonialists didn't see. So they banned it because they figured their sacrament made these people useless and lazy. The days of slavery have long gone, but the prohibitionist laws have stayed in place. It's 100 years now. There is no longer any racist agenda in this country. So why is there still a racist law? We believe it. This law is the last bastion of apartheid. All the rest of the laws have come down, but this is the last one, and they're holding on to it tight. Psychoanalyst and author of Our Right to Drugs, Thomas Satz, described prohibition as a form of social engineering. The same kind of engineering that sent Christians to the lions, or burnt witches, or gassed the Jews, or hunted the Aborigine, bashed gays, and even vilified Africans under apartheid.
For the oppressors, the prohibition of drugs is a convenient scapegoat, something to blame things on. It was the drugs. Poverty, crime, gangsterism, and various cycles of hopelessness and despair have all been blamed on illegal drugs at some point or other. Over the centuries, prohibitions have had a hard time deciding what to prohibit. We'll just look at a little bit of the history of prohibition and how crazy it is. Christians still revere fermented fruit as the sacrament of their body of Christ, but at one stage in history decreed coffee as an evil drug. Muslims encouraged coffee use but banned alcohol. Many African ceremonies revolve around fermented grains such as sorghum and maize. Tobacco is accepted the world over as a recreational intoxicant, but it wasn't always that way. In the 17th century, in what is now Turkey, there was the death penalty for alcohol, tobacco, and coffee. This spread to other European countries, but did nothing to deter the human thirst for intoxication and mind alteration. None of this, it's plain to see, had any basis in science. It has been a moral, ideological decision since time immemorial. Modern-day prohibition is no different. The South African drug laws, like all other countries' drug laws, are not based on science, and it's really important to remember that. In modern times, the prohibition of alcohol in the United States in the early 20th century drove distillery and brewery production underground. It attracted a criminal element, fed a healthy black market, and resulted in a lot of automatic weapons. Does that sound familiar?
The favourite one in South Africa's media is to get a whole bunch of Dagga. Sorry you don't like the word, by the way. Call it what you want. I don't care. We have more fights about the word than any other fight. Nobody actually cares about the plant and what it does to your head, but Dagga. Oh, we're exhausted with it. We're going to stick to our guns. We call ourselves a Dagga Couple because we were named that way, by the way. Nothing's going to change. We enjoy the word, it's a South African word, and most people who are absolutely turned off by the subject, they weren't born early enough to understand why they don't like the word in the first place. Because the word was vilified 40, 50 years ago by an apartheid regime. They just made it guttural and turned it into something bad. But the Khoisan and the Bushmen have been using it for 3,000 years and they didn't really mind about it. So we're going to stick to our guns. It's proudly South African, by the way. Marijuana, cannabis, is all twack. You call it whatever you want. Pot. We don't care, by the way. The favourite thing with the South African media is to burn it. They love burning this stuff. They have public executions of sacks and dagga. So this was in Muizenberg in Cape Town last year, and there was this big hullabaloo. This guy rocks up with all these bags of stuff, and they put it in the public incinerator in the public works department, and they set fire to it all, and that's what we did to it. It's lunacy, isn't it? The previous slide was from the 1920s, was the alcohol being hit with a pickaxe, and now they're burning the soul. So no, as humans, if you think for any minute that humans are enlightened, don't even go there. We're not. History is repeating itself, and we're just ad infinitum going through the same motions. We really are. Cannabis users in southern Africa are a culture of people doing what they've always done as an integral part of their lives for what we think is more than 700 years in history. This lifestyle isn't in fact as harmful as the prohibitionists would have you believe. The press would believe, if you read the press, you would kind of come out of the press believing that there's some sort of drug scourge. It's everywhere. Well, we got a theory for that. Never before have so many drugs been consumed by so many people. And there lies the key. More illicit drugs are being taken than ever before because there are more people than ever before. Think about it. The overwhelming majority of our time using these substances is enjoyable, and it's a pleasing thing to do, and we do it with each other. There are more potentially lethal prescription medications being taken than ever before as well, for exactly the same reason. There are more people to take them. So it's not a scourge in our books, it's just a natural progression. There aren't the same amount of people taking more substances. There are more people taking the same amount of substances. If that's our theory anyway. There is no scourge. Don't believe the papers. We've been doing it for long. We've been crushing it and distilling it and drying it and smoking it and brewing it and burning it forever. We're hardwired to do it. It's what humans do best. We strive for mind alteration. We're mammals, and all mammals, your dogs, my dogs, our dogs go for the same ganja plant in the garden. They know which plant they like, and for that season, that dog will go to that plant, and they enjoy that plant rather than the other plant. So the animals know more than we do, really, but they don't know about prohibition. So today's policymakers not only ignore the history of this plant and the history of how we ingest things, they ignore the plethora of reputable research proving beyond any doubt the positive therapeutic properties of the world's ancient plants. It's as if the information is being lost. Governments have been known to bury reports that contradict state propaganda. Recognise him? Most famously, in 1972, the state-funded Schaefer Report extolled the virtues of cannabis to the whole of the American public. It reported the medicinal value of the plant, and it reported the relative harmlessness of the plant. It was crushed by this man here. Crushed. In fact, it was shredded. It was put in the bin and shredded. He didn't want anything to do with that. His famous battle cry was for an all-out war on the drugs, and it gathered momentum. He pumped lots of money into it, and this is what we're feeling today. One man, 50 years later, he did it. It was him. Hundreds and hundreds of medical journals publish positive findings about the cannabis plant and other banned plants, yet we still live in a world where cannabis is a Schedule I plant with no medicinal value and a high addiction rate, is what they say. So for 2 generations now, this modern day prohibition has been enforced. So now we are the children of the people who were prohibited in the first place. So now all of those ancient lineages of knowledge about these plants are starting to be lost because the tabloids are taking over with this information and telling everybody it's bad and not good. So all these little pockets of people around here and there and around the country, we're the people that are now reproducing that ancient information because it has to come back into the fore.
There's a particular language around prohibition, and it's good to pay attention to this language because it's very manipulative. The war on drugs, now in its second generation. Positive knowledge of the world's entheogens has disappeared to be replaced by negative information. Information designed to repel you from the plants and not attract you. Teachers and practitioners have disappeared underground, enemies of the state, because strictly speaking, the plants are not illegal. It's our use of these plants that is illegal. Ceremonies and gatherings are regularly promulgated by word of mouth or in closed groups. Everybody here knows that only too well. Thankfully, this auditorium is testament to the fact that the deep-rooted knowledge of this ancient plant wisdom is still being orally transmitted by pockets of practitioners and enthusiasts the world over. A generation of internet-savvy youth, and thank goodness for the internet, we were just saying that downstairs. You know, Gareth Prince, when he first challenged the Constitution, albeit on different grounds than we're doing, in the year 2000, he didn't have the internet. There was no Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all of that. So we're very blessed to have the internet and to be able to connect through this amazing medium. It's never been easier to be informed to digest both sides of this polarized discussion on the plant. It's becoming more difficult to pull the wool over the world's eyes. The drug war political battle cries are sounding more and more hollow. We have a friend, an academic, whose name is Andre Krokamp, and he wrote an amazing academic paper called The Anatomy of Prohibition. And if you go to the Fields of Green website, it's there, and it makes for a very good read. And he called Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign, he called it intellectually hollow. And that's true. She was appealing to this middle-class, middle-of-the-road sector of American society that were being groomed to the baby boomers. They were being groomed to toe the line. Go live in your townhouse, go do your 9-to-5 job. Prohibitionist rhetoric is, for the most part, intellectually shallow and baseless. It's like they've all digested the same old ancient moral manual. Thankfully, times have changed since the blandness of Nancy Reagan's address 30 years ago. A new generation of people who use consciousness-expanding substances are starting to understand that prohibition is a censorship of their bodies and their minds, and as such has far-reaching consequences in a democratically free society. This is a government war on unapproved mental states. Paternalism by governments purporting to be saving you from yourself and keeping you from harm has been revealed as a sham. It is not possible to restrict the use of these substances without encroaching on civil liberties and ultimately our human rights.
Which is what these guys are about. We don't actually care that much about medicine and hemp and making socks and tinctures and stuff. That will all come. We're happy with whatever you want to do with the future of this plant. But right here and now, we want to legalize it because it's an infringement of our human rights. It doesn't matter if I smoke something and it turns me into a fruitcake in seconds. That's immaterial. All of these conversations about how good or bad this plant is, or the plants are, it's moot. It doesn't matter. As long as tobacco and alcohol are out there on the streets, the conversation is moot. Whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's my right and your right to put in your bodies whatever you like. So for 50 years or more of our adult lives between us, we've used these plants a lot. And at times we've had to have eyes in the back of our heads, and you will all know the same story. You've always got to have your wits about you, because they're out there and they're coming to get you, because the authorities don't like any of you lot. You are all enemies of the state, all of you. And we'll get onto that in a minute. But as we've seen, we're not alone in this room in our quest to all alter our consciousness, because it is a very basic human requirement. You were doing it when you were a kid at school, spinning. You were doing it at the bottom of the swimming pool when you were 10 years old, holding your breath. It's all an altered state of consciousness. But now we just use plant entheogens to increase that. So it's probably fair to say the more you dabble in illegal substances and the longer you do it for, the chance of discovery by the authorities increases, yes? That day came to us 4.5 years ago. It's 4.5 years. In a pre-dawn police raid, the cops rocked up and it was a hellish thing for 5 hours. It's the middle of winter. They expected to see some crazy hydroponic lab. They call it hydrophonic now, by the way. They got a spelling mistake in the Gazette, and since that point they've called it hydrophonic. So we've asked them whether that means you can either smoke it underwater or hear it underwater. They didn't answer us back. So hydrophonic dope is what they were after, but they found a pair of hippies in their sleeping attire, and we eventually got nailed with over 1 kilogram in a 20-litre bucket in our attic, and the rest is history. So it was a very filthy 24 hours. Cannabis was found in the house, bail was set. We're still on 1,000 rands bail each from the state 4 years later. They still can't get to us because, remember, we've turned the tables. We are the plaintiffs. They are the defendants now. Big difference. So we got to grips with the situation and decided after a heck of a lot of soul searching that we'd actually fight it, because we were bloody livid. We were livid that they would treat us that way. We were no harm. They didn't gauge the situation. There's the gun in my ear for 5 hours, and they didn't realise that I wasn't some sort of crazy cartel member with an automatic weapon in my pyjamas. They didn't get that bit. They were just being horrible. So there were other alternatives. We could have paid the bribe. We could have got the criminal record, but we travel a lot. We're professional people. We don't need the criminal record. We're not going to get a visa. It's as simple as that. And there are tens of thousands of South Africans walking around South Africa that have no idea that they do have a criminal record, because when they were 17 in a roadblock, they just signed the dotted line and paid the 100 rand out of fear. Fear. And now they go for a job when they're 21 and they've just finished tertiary education, and they've got a 10-year suspended, so they can't get a visa to go and teach English in Korea. And it guts them because their charge was 5 years ago and they don't even remember it. It's horrible. So we wanted to avoid that. The only way to do it was to actually fight. So we could have paid the dodgy lawyer and it would have all gone away, and it would have cost us a heck of a lot less money. It would have cost us, actually, at the time, I think it was 40,000 rand each to the prosecutor, and it would have gone. Couldn't do that either, because, you know, if you do that, they go, whoa, we got a live one, and they'll come back. So we fight. We had to stand up for our rights, because we aren't criminals. How could we be criminals by sitting in our house smoking a joint? Where's the victim? There is no victim. So how can there be a crime? And that is the crux of the matter. Two old people sitting in their house, in their pyjamas, smoking a joint, not hurting themselves, or more importantly, not hurting anyone else. That's the crux of the matter. Prohibition wrecks everybody's human rights, so we're going to get them back for everybody.
Thank you.
Baby steps. We've rattled the cage. We're rattling it every single day. It's actually getting quite hectic. We're broken with it sometimes. We have no idea what we're doing most of the time. Even now, we're just busking this. We've never ever read this script. We've never done this presentation. We finished this presentation 3 hours ago. We've been on the road for 12 hours from the Transkei. Put another shirt on. Get to the presentation. So this is where you see us. So we base what we know from the plants. The plants have taught us many things. Loving kindness, compassion, and patience. 3 main things that these plants have taught us. And we need an armoury of all 3 of those to fight the beast. Because if you can hit people with kindness and compassion, and maybe agree with them every now and again, it blows the wind out of their sails. Rah, 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 rah. Yes, we agree. It works. The overwhelming reason we decided to sue the state and prod the beast and wake up the hornet's nest was because we're speaking the truth. We're right. The plants were unanimous in their decisions, and besides, we owe it to the cannabis plant. It's been a great lifetime companion to me, to Myrtle. So we owe it to the plant to do this for the plant. That's the way we look at it. And we're convinced we've developed the mental tenacity and the sheer bloody mindedness to take up this challenge of relegalization because of our work with the San Pedro plant, not the cannabis plant. We take San Pedro every day of our lives in various forms, and we're surrounded by the plant. And that's one of the most important plants that we have, because the matrix is laid bare. And you can tell if people are telling porcupines at you. It makes you, it brings out your loving kindness and your compassion to all of these nasty people. Because if you do have compassion for your enemy, again, it blows the wind out of your sails. One other thing that we use the plants for, especially San Pedro, is if we've got a problem in our heads that we can't solve, take some San Pedro and go walk around the botanical gardens for the morning, and it sort of rewires you into thinking about things from another angle. And we always try and, before we post a post or write a blog or do anything or have a comment about anything or any opinion, we've learned, don't just rush in there with an opinion. Hang out a bit and think about it for a minute, how to word it, and be careful about how you word things, because we live online. We are very much in the public eye, and whatever Myrtle and I say is set in stone every time. And we've learned that, so we're very careful about what we say. So by the time we've looked at all the angles, and our hard drives actually get full of information, and my RAM at the moment is full. We are both full. We need to have a reboot and a defrag and a system reload and a new operating system. And that is where our friend ayahuasca comes in. All right, you see where ayahuasca comes in? You've got a head full of... Ayahuasca is the one that actually defrags it and brings it back to one. And you wake up the next morning with a new operating system. So they've all got their uses, these plants. Obviously, you can't take ayahuasca every day of the week. I don't think so, anyway. Maybe I stand corrected, but for me, no. But for San Pedro, in the doses we take, we have little pills. We take 1.5, 2 grams of San Pedro dry every day just to keep us on the edge and just keep our minds tuned into the task at hand. So none of this is taken lightly by any of us. We have complete intentionality in our use of these plants. If you don't, then things can get pear-shaped. Because imagine taking ayahuasca if you're bored. Because some people take these substances because they are bored. Young people say, oh, I'll have another joint. I'm bored, I'll have another joint. And things start going pear-shaped then. They're not being used for the right reason. Legal and illegal substances are exactly the same thing. So if you don't have any tension for that morning joint, and you have that morning joint, you're going to smoke another 10, and you're going to be sat there in the same place for the rest of the day with absolutely useless, and it will make you stupid and useless, cannabis, no problem. It really will. But if you've got a task at hand and you use the cannabis plant, it's a tool. It's not a play tool, it's a work tool. For me, personally. If you have a task at hand and you smoke this cannabis plant, it will actually give Zen-like qualities to washing the car or mowing the garden or doing the dishes, we find. And some people are agreeing with me.
There's been loads of talk around cannabis and health, or medical marijuana, as the Americans like calling it. Especially since the late Dr. Ambrosini introduced the Medical Innovation Bill into Parliament exactly 1 year ago on Saturday. It's known as the Valentinian Pact between our advocate Robin Strachan-Ford and the late Dr. Ambrosini. The bill was quite revolutionary in South African Parliament. It's the first time it hasn't been opposed by a single political party. It was also the first private member's bill to be introduced into Parliament. And that's what really brought cannabis and health into the South African arena. And next week, on the 25th of February, the politicians will continue to debate the Medical Innovation Bill, which has undergone an incredible redrafting. Of those of you who don't know the original draft of the bill, it had to do with creating cancer treatment centres where cannabis could be administered, and it wasn't very democratic. It was all about exclusive rights to this plant for various healing centres. Anyway, all of that has been taken down, and the bill as it stands today, it stands for medical and industrial uses of the plant. So please follow the media and follow our various websites for news of the Medical Innovation Bill. One way some governments are at least decriminalizing the use of drugs is by condoning studies to determine some of the positive medicinal qualities of these banned substances and plants. In the late 1950s, scientists began research on the newly discovered psychedelics, LSD and MDMA. And along with psilocybin, these substances showed huge promise in the treatment of mental and other conditions. So much so, it seems, they were banned. That research has recommenced in recent years under the strict watchful eye of the planetary parents, of course. I'm sure most of you know MAPS, Rick Doblin and the boys in America. They're doing amazing work with psychedelic research. In this way, and as we've seen with the medical marijuana, psilocybin, iboga, MDMA analogues, and as medical applications have begun to pave the way for getting these substances erased from the prohibition list and more accepted in society. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, he's probably the most famous of all of the turncoats. It was a dreadful, evil weed, the devil's lettuce, and then all of a sudden, oh, no, it's really, really good for you. So he did the cannabis cause around the world a lot of good, and we're hoping to get him as one of our expert witnesses, or at least video testimony or something that will give our child some sort of wow, you know. But having said that, with all of this talk around medicinal use, around particularly this amazing thing called cannabis oil, the concentrate of the plant, our argument as responsible adult users, and I just want to point out here, if anybody, we're trying not to use the word recreational. We learned this when we went to Amsterdam for the Cannabis Cup last year. One of the American activists pointed out to us, no, don't use the word recreational, use the word adult use. Because then that covers what about the children? Responsible adult use instead of recreational. We always say, why wait till you're sick? And with the Medical Innovation Bill, Fieldsofgreenforall and the Dagga Couple submission to Parliament on the Medical Innovation Bill is entitled, Who is going to play God? Who says that your cancer is stage 2 and my cancer is stage 4, so I'm allowed to take cannabis, but you're not because you're not sick enough? It's just irrational, just like the laws around the plant. We obviously have to make some consideration for this bill in front of Parliament, but our fight is in the courts, because we believe that nobody has the right to play God and say, you are sick and you are not sick, you may take it, you may not take it. We're convinced that we're fit of body and sound of mind, we hope, as a result of our relationship with the cannabis plant. We don't have a doctor, we don't have an analyst, we don't use prescription medicine. We'd go as far as to say our cannabis use is protecting us as we use it. 21st century research suggests time and again links to neurogenesis, protection from arthritis, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and as a bronchodilator. Because we had more than 150 grams in our possession, we were being charged with being dealers. Dealers, this is a really strange word, real propaganda terminology. Turn it the other way around. What about drug dealers being seen as the pharmaceutical companies? I think I'm preaching to the choir here. Pushing pills via their physician accomplices. It was they, let's not forget, who gave us cocaine and heroin in the first place. Bayer, at one stage last century, ruled the world with its heroin products for pain, children's teething and coughs. And I must just add here another word about the late Dr. Mario Ambrosini. Despite the fact that he decided to end his own life, he didn't die of cancer. He died of morphine addiction because he could feel that he was losing his mind. And it just so happened that about 2 months before he died, he went over to England, and he was too scared to take his cannabis oil with him. He had a bad turn in England, and they put him on morphine. By the time he got back to South Africa 2 weeks later, he was addicted to the morphine, and he could feel it clouding his mind, and he knew that he wasn't strong enough to fight the addiction. So that's why he decided to end his life. So there you go, Bayer, thank you very much. Cocaine for toothaches could be bought on Commissioner Street, just down the road here. Just a walk from here, and until 1932, cocaine was available over the counter. In those days, the dealers were called shopkeepers. It's the same thing with a different spin, and people have short memories. Somewhere along the timeline, we've given up the sovereignty of our bodies to specialists. People who claim to know more about our bodies and minds than we do use our medication, not yours.
It's important to add here that the prohibition in the use of cannabis in South Africa and most other countries around the world also extends to industrial cannabis or hemp. All major objections to the use of cannabis are moral objections to either the adult use or a sinister economic and political objection to medical and industrial use. Hemp is a subspecies of the cannabis plant that's used for food, seeds, etc. We saw some really nice extracts down below there earlier. Fueled, you know all about this stuff, the fibre, I don't have to go on about this too much. It defies logic that despite several permits being given for trials with the plant, nobody ever attempted to make industrial cannabis legal in South Africa. So there's people vying for position to grow this stuff to make socks and shirts and stuff, but nobody's actually trying to get it legal first. We seem to we're the only ones doing this. Everyone's got the cart before the horse. They want the permit for the medicine, they want the permit to grow, they want the permit to make themselves all right. But that doesn't change any law, and the rest of us are being persecuted for it. So stop thinking about the future of what you want to do with it, and get on with fixing it here and now to make it legal for all of us. There are 4 platforms that we have to deal with in our broad brush sweep of the courts. It's no use going in just saying, we want to smoke this because we want to be stoned. Because that's the essence of what I'm fighting for. I'm not fighting for anything other than the right to be stoned. The right to sit in my garden and smoke a blunt. Which part of that does anybody not understand? It's simple. But we couldn't get through the High Court with an argument like that. So we have to take in all of these responsibilities, basically. The responsible adult use, that's these 2 people here, smoking a joint in their pyjamas in the lounge. We have to think about the Sangomas and their medicine. We have to think about sovereign land and the kings of the various tribes who need to use their land to grow this plant to bring an economic renaissance back to their people. It goes back hundreds of years, and prohibition's only 100 years old, remember? The industrial and scientific use of the plant. We have to bring in experts about the sock makers and the shirt makers and the biofuel makers and all these guys. They're all part of the challenge, but it's not our fight. You see, we have to make this as broad as possible to encompass every single South African and all their wishes. And we've covered the health and medical use of it with the Medical Innovation Bill. So, again, we say we're not sick and we've no intention of becoming hemp farmers. We're all fighting for the re-legalization of cannabis for all uses. That's what we're doing it for. You can carry on and do whatever you want with the plant. At the end of the day, we just want to go back to one and go back to being in our pyjamas in the lounge smoking a joint while everybody goes off and makes billions out of whatever they want to do with it. I'm not interested. I just want to get back to what it was.
If we get into the realms of how much harm each one of these substances can do to us, surely the table of harmful substances would look a whole lot different to the one that we see in prohibition legislation. Those of you that were Kanyisa would remember this table. It's a very, very famous table, and we're hoping to get the author, Dr. David Nutt, either with a supporting affidavit on paper or hopefully in person to South Africa for our trial. And you can see there what's on the left, alcohol. What's on the far right? Mushrooms. And alcohol is legal, and our dear friend Monica was put in jail for her mushrooms. So it's completely on its head. And this is scientific. You know, it's not something that David Nutt just sucked out of his thumb. It really is. It's a very important thing, the scale of harms. The line in the sand. Where do you draw the line in the sand that you're allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that? They call it, in legal terms, they call it the Harkson test. It's a Harkson test to see whether a law is rational or not. And a popular reason for the fierce resistance to cannabis is the fear that it will somehow taint the middle-class society with Dagga Couple culture. And I'd like to just relate a story that happened in Knysna Magistrates Court a few weeks ago. One of our long-time followers was arrested. He had a number of plants in his garden, so we sent our advocate up from Cape Town to go and represent him. The advocate handed him this draft order that says that he wants a complete withdrawal of the charges pending the outcome of our case, and I'll go into all the legal stuff later. And the public prosecutor was incredibly perplexed. Everybody, all the rusters and our friend Bruce and everybody were waiting outside for the advocate, and there was much animated conversation in the office. And then eventually the advocate came out and he said, no, we've been told to go away for lunch and come back after lunch. So off they went, they came back after lunch, and there was the magistrate from George. He'd been summoned over lunch. And he says, yeah, but you can't let them just do this, they're just going to smoke Dagga in the street. So the advocate said, yes. Well, you know, they're all criminals anyway. So the advocate said, yes, cannabis criminals, yes, they've all got criminal records, yes. Yeah, but you just can't do that. Okay, you come back next month. And they've put it off. So there's this crazy thing that smoking Dagga is somehow going to taint our society, and we're going to have this Dagga culture. Well, I can tell you that stoner culture is an amazing thing. And if you get a whole lot of cannabis users in one place, you are bound to have a great day out.
They are great days out. All of our parties and all our festivals are great days out because they actually bring all South Africans together in one place. Young, old, white, black, pink and all the bits in between. That was down in Maboneng a couple of years ago, and we were quite shocked to see so many people. We couldn't believe the popularity of this plant. We actually think that over 60% of South Africans use the plant one way or another. We can't prove it because 40% of that 60% is still in the closet. And that's not their fault. They're just scared of coming out. They're going to lose their job, they'll lose their spouse, they'll lose custody of their kids. That's how it is. So we understand, but slowly but surely we're trying to be the vanguards of people coming out. Don't be scared. It doesn't matter what people think. To most people anyway, but if you're sitting in a middle management corporation and somebody wants to test your urine, then I dare say you will get some sweat on your brow. The common ground that brings people together to laugh, to share experiences and listen to music and talk till all hours, that's what cannabis is. When stoners come together, there's always a vibe of peace and harmony, in our opinion. The only problem that we've encountered with this lot is they've all got these really weird, diverse musical tastes, because all the people in the street here are coming for cannabis, not music. And all the music happens and they say, well, why didn't you bring the reggae? Oh, why didn't you bring the trip-hop? Oh, how comes there's no drum and bass? What about the metal? So we can't actually help everybody with all of their musical taste on a day like that, but it's a small price to pay. In general, the objections to the use of all these plant entheogens amount to the claims that they're all escapists. We're all escaping from something. Why don't you just be high on life? Well, I got high on life, but then I got a tolerance, is what I say. The use of the plants makes it more likely that one will escape from the truth, the demands of reason and self-determination. If using cannabis leads to the distortion of reason, then one has to state that the excessive use of any stimulants leads to the distortion of reason. This is a warning against abuse, not against any balanced use. Because remember, a prohibitionist hasn't got a middle ground. You are using it, therefore you are abusing it. There's no two ways. If you've got 2 grams in a roadblock and you get thrown in the jail, you will end up in a harm reduction program for 6 weeks because you're obviously an addict. That's the way they play it. And again, you know, cannabis supposedly leads to a temporary impairment of short-term memory. Does anybody remember what I just said? So, is it not good to forget a hectic day out and about? The way I see it is, we get bombarded with stuff. Millions and millions of things. You walk in a building, there's 6 flat screens showing you all sorts of stuff. There's billboards all over the freeways, the roads, the radio's on, the TV's hitting you, and you've got all of these inputs that you don't actually need. So I think my use of a cannabis plant in the evening when I've finished with all of that kind of filters all of that stuff out that you don't actually need. The stuff that you were hit with that you don't need to process. That's my personal opinion as well. So the way we see it is, forget a hectic day at the office with a joint on the couch. With prohibition, there's no room for this moderate, responsible use. It's all about abuse. So if the prohibitionist claim that cannabis causes loss of freedom and the power of self-determination, then that's what the laws do in the first place. It's the same thing. So it's a paradox.
So now just to bring us back to why we are actually all here tonight, and back to what Ilana said in the beginning, is that our dear Monica Mushroom Mama got a visit from the police in December. And I was, shortly after her arrest, I was down in Cape Town. I met with her and her legal team, and we discussed the parallels in the two cases. Well, they're almost the same thing when you come to the sovereignty of your body and your mind and all of that. So I'm going to explain the legal processes that we have gone through from the beginning now, and what we've done along the way. So just keep Monica and the fight for the mushrooms in mind when we're going through this, because this is what Monica needs from all of you and from the plant people groups as a whole in South Africa. She needs your support the same way as that we've had the support from all the stoners in South Africa over the last 4 years. Luckily for her, we've done a lot of the groundwork, and I could almost say that she can use our same legal papers, because it's the same argument. There's medicinal uses, there's responsible adult use, there's traditional, spiritual and religious use. There might even be there are industrial applications, maybe not for psilocybin, but for other mushrooms. I mean, the mushrooms can eat up used spilled oil and that type of thing. So the parallels are almost identical. So those of you that are going to be supporting Monica through the process need to pay attention so that you can see the parallels quite clearly.
So, if society persistently treats a group of people as criminals, it's difficult for them not to become criminals. If one thinks that cannabis use is a vice, it slants the experience in a negative direction, tending to make the activity antisocial. We kind of see it all the time in the tabloids. A vicious cycle is started, driving society and the cannabis user to a more and more extreme antagonism. That old joke about, it makes you paranoid. No wonder. No wonder, in the state of the play out there, you have to be paranoid, because your paranoia keeps you safe. So if one considers the herb as a stimulant like any other, and beneficial if used with moderation under the proper circumstances, the experience is channeled in a more positive direction. But we know that because we're users. However, this attitude is difficult for a cannabis user to maintain in a society where a small amount, a small possession, a personal supply of it is treated as a crime. You're always thinking of being a criminal, and people go down because they automatically believe they're a criminal that have committed a crime. So they'll sign the dotted line, they will admit guilt, dink, suspended sentence. They don't think they're not criminals. But most people blatantly break the cannabis laws every day of their lives by lighting up, because it's a really silly rule. We've got absolutely no regard for the 1992 Drugs Act whatsoever in our household. Cannabis is legal. We hope our challenge is only the beginning, because if cannabis is the gateway drug, then we believe this campaign is the campaign that opens up the gateway for all of your planted allegiance. We'll start soft, we'll go little baby steps with the cannabis bit, because it's a lot easier than trying to explain out LSD, because but it will come. So let's do the baby steps with the cannabis first. And another good point is, one of our mantras, it all started here, so we're adamant that it's going to end here first. We're going to be the first country in the whole world that actually changes their constitution that says it's a violation of human rights not to be able to put what you want in your body. That's our ultimate goal. It started in South Africa, so let's end it here and open the gateway for real freedom of human expression. It's been our experience that people only get the harms of prohibition when they've had a run-in with the law. And if we fast-track backwards 18 months or something to whenever Kanyisa was, the 18 months ago. I don't know whether nearly 2 years ago now. I'm not quite sure. 18 months or so. We told Monica not to be so chirpy about her ceremonies and get it off Facebook and go underground and be selective about the amount of people who come and who you vet, and don't have a friend of a friend ever. Have a friend, and then you do it that way. If you bring friends of friends of friends, it goes pear-shaped. That's exactly what happened. She didn't vet the process and she went down. It happens, and it was bound to happen. But somehow she's in a very good space. She's strong. She's looking at she's looking at 10 years of her life to do what she has to do now. And I believe she's nearly 70. Yes? Something like that? Anyway. So we are, as an audience, we ask you not to be complacent, because it may well be your turn next. And it happens just like that. So bear with us while we legalise Dagga, because we're doing it. We know all about all the other plants, but we can't be about all the other plants, because the Dagga couple are kind of squeaky clean, middle-aged Methodist liberals who don't have any sort of poly-drug use. We just smoke cannabis in our pyjamas in the privacy of our own home. If anybody out there found out that we did a whole bunch of LSD and blah, 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 they'd go, they'd have a different opinion of us, of course. So we try and keep it squeaky clean, and a lot of people actually claim that we're really boring, but I'm sure you we're not. So we have to keep this persona up, okay? So we are hoping that the legalization of cannabis is the gateway to everybody's freedoms, actually.
Right, so we, just so that everybody knows, our court case will be at the North Gauteng High Court during March 2016. We were hoping we'd have been there by now, but unfortunately it's a complicated process, and it was meant to be September this year, and then the government pushed it to March 2016. So if anybody asks you when's the case, that is when it's going to happen, and it's going to happen in the High Court. Because the High Court decides on the constitutionality of the matter. So all of the evidence and all of the nitty-gritty of it, and expert witnesses and all of that happens in the High Court. And then the Constitutional Court is a hearing that decides on the truth of what has gone down in the High Court. So we started out as the Dagga Couple, called that by the Pretoria News in July 2011. And our very first advocate, he's no longer on our legal team, said to us that there were two things that we needed to do if we wanted to succeed. And the first thing was to build a large public presence of social activism, and the second thing was to register a non-profit company. So we did it through this long, protracted process. We eventually got permission from the Law Society, and we registered Fieldsofgreenforall. And it's called all with capital letters because this is for all South Africans. And not just those that are sick, it's not just those who want to make money, it's for all South Africans. And we did this in Fields of Green. As you can see, it's this electronic platform. You can go and have a look at our website. We are the evidence provider for the trial of the plant. So obviously we have to deal with everybody across the whole of South Africa, and this is the platform where all this evidence comes together. So what I suggest for the Mushroom Challenge is that eventually a non-profit company is formed. You won't believe the doors that it opens. It's a hell of a lot of work. It took us a year to set up Fieldsofgreenforall the way that it is now. But it really does help. When we were over in Amsterdam, we were speaking to a lot of the activists from around the world, and the minute that you said, oh, we've got an NGO, their ears would prick up, because then it gives you that legitimacy and that credibility that comes with the word NGO. Well, we're actually a Section 21 non-profit company. So that's what we did. And you'll see on our website that we have something called the Green Network. The Green Network is an online, secure network of like-minded individuals who join this network in order to support our work and also to contribute their various expertise. It's a small monthly fee of 150 Rand a month, or a annual fee of 1,800 minus 420, so it gives you 1,380 Rand a year. And we have a social group and it's almost identical to Facebook on the back end. It's completely secure. We can talk about anything there. The Green Network is really coming onto its own. It's been a lot of work, but we've got some amazingly interesting people there. Quite a few doctors, lots of legal people, traditional healers, the whole spectrum of people. So I suggest then again that when it comes to the mushroom challenge, that you make something that's not on recognized social media, that you make some sort of an online group that you can chat securely. Now here is what looks like quite a complicated table, but this is basically what we aim to do with Fields of Green for All. You need to be phenomenally organized and clear about what it is you're going to achieve and how you're going to achieve this. And we really didn't know what we're doing. We still don't really know what we're doing, but we consult the experts wherever we can. And a friend of mine who works in monitoring and evaluation in the green energy sector came up with this result chain. So you have various inputs, and then you have your activities. So we have our awareness raising, which is all of our social media and Facebook and our travels around the country, to get as much advice and market research as you can, all of these activities that we do, admin, lots of it, fundraising, networking, outreach. We've just been down to Port St. John's about the crop spraying, you've probably seen that. And then we have all of these outputs of what must we be seen to be doing, okay? And I think that these two big blocks in the middle are the most important. The reduction of the stigma associated with cannabis and building a community of practice and support. And that particular sentence, building a community of practice and support, the government loved that sentence. They want people to be involved, and when they see that you are actually building this community, it makes your work a bit easier. And then at the bottom you have the actual impact that you're going to make and the sort of desired outcomes of this whole. This is on our website. Of this whole challenge, and then hopefully it will all be over. We'll get our desired impacts, and then we can carry on with our lives. So it's quite important. We've learned with this whole non-profit company thing to be super organized and focused on what you're doing. I'm just trying to give everybody a bit of advice on how they can support Monica through our experience, and hopefully it'll go a bit faster for her than it has for us. So we also have these various campaigns that we've picked up along the way. We knew for quite a long time, probably about the first 2.5, 3 years of our campaign, that we had to do something about everybody else that was being arrested for cannabis. So we come up with this whole idea called Join the Queue. If you are arrested for cannabis, you contact us. We are the first people that you phone, even before you phone your parents. Okay? Because we need to get to you before you get to any lawyers. Because I can promise you that the biggest nightmare in my life is attorneys. They really are. They want your money. They want to take your case to trial so that they can take you to court. One guy in Cape Town's been to court 19 times. And his case is still not resolved because then there's no evidence, and then there's no cops in the court, and then there's no this. What we do is we get you right in the beginning. We have 3 attorneys that are on our side. The one guy is actually right up there with the whole mushroom challenge, and they know what to do, and we trust them, and we have a standard fee where we can take on your case that is absolutely a tiny little fraction of what you would pay with an attorney off the street. So the Join the Queue is to join our case so that your trial, you never go to trial for being caught with cannabis, your case is put on hold pending the outcome of our case. Now, if we've been out on bail for 4.5 years, why shouldn't everybody else be? But it's very difficult to get this across to people, but we are very proud of the fact that between us and the Dagga Party, we have 18 High Court precedents of people that have joined the queue and got a stay in their prosecution. And this is cases everywhere from one little joint found in the ashtray in a roadblock to 500 kilograms of dried plant matter. So it doesn't matter what you are caught with, the law is wrong, and that is the bottom line. And that's what you've got to always remember with the mushroom challenge, is the law is wrong. Doesn't matter what people say about it, it gives you this some sort of mental disorder or whatever, the law is wrong, and that is the basis of everything that you do. And that's what these attorneys don't get. They say, oh no, but we're going to try and get you off because they didn't have a search warrant. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how much cannabis they found, doesn't matter how the cops, well, it doesn't matter how the cops treated you, because that will obviously come up in your affidavits going forward. But the joining the queue thing is really important. And I can tell you now that lots and lots and lots of people get caught with mushrooms. Okay, particularly in the summer, and particularly down in Cape Town, around the trans party scene. They search the cars, they find the mushrooms, that's it. When they bust us, they found the mushrooms, but they didn't know what they were. So they left them. So prepare yourselves if you're supporting Monica. There will be lots and lots of people that want to do the same thing. So from the outset, set up a system, call it what you want, where anybody that is caught with, or any other entheogenic substance for that matter, can actually follow the same. It took us sort of 2.5 years to set up join the queue and realize that it was necessary. But right from the beginning of the Mushroom Challenge, you must know that everybody that is caught can follow the same course that Monica's. And Monica is busy applying for a stay in her prosecution in the same way, pending the outcome of her constitutional challenge. And then what will happen is we have got something in called a R16A notice, which is a notice to the Constitutional Court saying that there's a challenge coming up. So Monica will join our challenge. The minute that her R16A comes up, we'll join her challenge. So that it's all the same voice. Okay, so it's all going to be interlinked. We can't do all the work for you people. You need to support Monica, but it's going to be the same kind of process. And then this is our sort of coup de grace that we're busy working on at the moment. There's a page on our website called Dagga Couple, and this particular application, it's going to be going into the High Court hopefully within the next month or so, and this is to stop all arrests. Because we have two extreme cases on either side of the scale. The one case happened at the end of November last year, where 11 people were arrested as part of a large cannabis syndicate, and 2 people died. The one gentleman had a heart complaint and he wasn't given his warfarin medication in jail, so he died of a heart attack. And the other guy was actually given bail, but he freaked out so badly that he committed suicide. So that's the one end of the scale. The other end of the scale is a little boy, he's 4 years old and he has epilepsy. Really bad epilepsy, like you've seen the whole video of Charlotte's Web. If the supply of his cannabis oil is bust and that medication is seized by the police, he's not going to get his medication and he's going to be even more brain damaged than he already is, and there's a chance that he will die. So that, and in the middle of all of it is all of our stoners. All the people that get bust all the time, all the people that are on the medication, all the people that want to make socks, all those people are in the middle. But on the one end is the 2 people who died, and on the other end is the child who could potentially die if he doesn't get this life-saving medicine. So that is what we're doing. We're making a High Court application to stop all arrests. You may not come into my house, you may not steal my stuff, you may not steal my medicine, you may not do anything except summons me to court. And then you go to court and you get a stay in prosecution, and that's it. So that's our next thing. And we wanted to call it Stop the Cops. But we decided that it was a little bit antagonistic. So we're calling it #FairCop, all nice for Twitter and all of that. And that should be out soon. And as soon as it's out, you'll see all about it in the video, because it's going to create a huge stir.
The ethos behind it is, if we are getting all these stays in prosecution in what amounts to 5 out of the 9 of the country's high courts now, we've set precedents all over the country. If they can't convict us, why bother arresting us? So they arrest people willy-nilly for all of these charges, and then we get them to stay in prosecution anyway. So the crux of the matter is, why persecute us if you can't prosecute us? So it is going to the highest level, and we've got legal beagles. They went, what a great idea, let's do this, and they think they can pull it off. So we will know, I don't know, maybe by May or so we'll start getting the inklings of how much the beast we've actually prodded, because they're not going to like this one. Because in the UK, they'll knock on your door and say, have you got a cannabis factory? Yes. Well, we'd like to take photos of it and summons you to court. So they come in, they take pictures of the whole thing, they don't care what you do with it at that point. They've got the evidence photographically, this is what you had at the time, and you will be charged with X amount and using electricity and what, and that's how they play it in England in the first world. Here, they rob your jewellery, they take your cell phones and your laptops, they shoot your dog, they terrorise you and you mess with the whole thing. So that's what we're trying to stop, because the police in this part of the world are completely out of control. So until that point, the Dagga Couple, which is the social activism arm of Fieldsofgreenforall, you see we've had a bit of a reorganisation. We're adults now with a non-profit company, and it opens doors. So we'll carry on with what we do. We will keep the petition up and running. The petition's running up to about 20,000 people now. It's online. There's the petition on the table there. If you haven't signed our petition, or go online and sign it. It doesn't mean that you want to smoke ganja in the streets and cause havoc. It just means you understand about prohibition being a crock. And please change it. If you go to the Dagga Couple's website, on the front page there's this huge timeline that I've put together. I don't know, there's about 200 entries now of what we see of how prohibition came together in South Africa. Go and have a look at that for a history lesson. The Dagga the Truth original video is now heading up to 50,000 hits. We've got 2 more short videos online. We're producing this documentary right now of the crop spraying we've just seen in the Transkei. We've got editors at it right now, and we are going to make people cry. Because what we saw made us, it was just overwhelming, the amount of cack that these people are going through in the Transkei with these squirrel helicopters coming over, spraying the lot. Spraying the cows, spraying the kraals, spraying the mealies, killing the pumpkins, doing it all in. And they've been doing it for 20 years, totally indiscriminately. There's no rules. They're not even on the right landing pad. There's no environmental impact studies, and that's what we see as our jobs. Poke that beast. So we're poking them. Go and have a look at our Facebook page in the last 24 hours. We are slating all of these pseudo-intellectuals that come along and saying, this Roundup is good for you. They're not allowed to say that anymore, because they just can't say that anymore, so we're taking people to task with it. So the activism will carry on. Go and have a look at our Facebook pages. We're running at 30,000 people on Facebook now. There will be a party this year. This year's big thing is there will be a global cannabis march in the Johannesburg area for the first time ever. We're going to do it in Soweto. Yeah. And we're expecting 8,000 people in Soweto, and we're going to have a party for you at the end of that one. We're going to unwrap it very, very shortly. We're working on that now. We'll get the Transkei out of the way at the moment. So we'd just like to say thank you to you guys for having us back again. We know we're kind of preaching to the choir a bit, but we need you to need us, because when it comes to people like Monica and the other plant entheogens, as you can see, we're up to our tonsils in doing it for ourselves. We'll help where we can, and we'll set you off in the right direction. But you've got to take the reins and do it for yourselves. And for heaven's sake, just keep looking behind your back. And if you feel paranoid, it's fine, because it does keep you safe. Because we are all enemies of the state. And that was 100 years ago. In fact, it's even more. It's 150 years ago. And it still rings true to this very day. It is nobody's business but yourselves what is inside your body. So if anybody wants to test your urine, I find that completely despicable, because it's nothing to do with anybody what's in my urine. I don't know about you. So that's what we end up every single time with. He said it 150 years ago, and he might as well have said it this morning, because it's exactly the same thing. Nothing changes. Thank you very much for having us. We've got straight can give bail. If you kill somebody in a car because you've had a bottle of whiskey, a police officer can give you bail. If you have raped somebody and they proved it was you, a police officer can give you bail. If you have got 2 grams in a roadblock, you will sit until Monday, because the magistrate's on weekend leave. And that's how it is with the 1992 Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act. You're guilty until proved innocent. So what we say to the people who are now on a Friday night staring down the barrel of 2 days in jail is, just do the 2 days in jail. It's not going to kill you, and you owe it to the plant, and it'll save you 6,000 rand in bribes. And you will get to Monday morning and you will be dishevelled and you will get in front of a magistrate and just look him in the eye and say, I need more time to get some legal advice. That's it. You will get a month. You will get 2 weeks to a month to go and seek legal advice. It hasn't cost you anything at this point because you're going to need that 6,000 rand to pay the lawyer next. So don't be scared about the jail. It's a cut place. I've been in enough. I know. I've smelt it. But it makes you a much better activist when you come out the other side. You're much more used to us. Because now you feel it, now you know it. And we always say that we get told off for saying this, but there are two types of stoners. Those that have been arrested and those that haven't. And the ones that haven't don't quite get it yet. It's not a game, this, and your life will be shattered the minute you get arrested. It's horrible. And it'll cost you in excess of 30,000 rand to clear your name, hopefully. And it'll take years. And you'll be embroiled in it forever. It's horrible. So remember about joining the queue, yeah? If you know of anybody or anybody knows anybody else who may well get into trouble, just get hold of us immediately. Don't even bother about the lawyer. The lawyer will take you to the cleaners. They're prohibitionists. They don't want anything to change. They all know that it's immoral and bad and wrong, but they don't do anything about it. They'll just take your money and fight for the next 2 years. One of the directors of Fieldsofgreenforall had 50 grams in his house 2.5 years ago. He's done 70,000 rand in lawyers and nothing's got anywhere yet. They've lost the 50 grams, so that's all moot. But he's paid 70,000 rand to the lawyers so far. If you've got any questions, we can talk all night.
A very big round of applause because they've given us incredible... As a speaker, you know, I know what you guys have done for us, and thank you. You guys are family. Thank you so much.
Well, we're bimbling along in this haphazard way of coming up with really good ideas, because we smoke a lot of cannabis, of course. You know, the minute you smoke cannabis, you come out with all these wild things. But we're the kind of people that actually get up and do something about it. Because 2 years ago, the helicopters were in Lasiki, and it made me mull. But I didn't have the resources or the time 2 years ago to do anything about it. It's absolutely abhorrent that these guys would put Roundup in a helicopter that was funded by the EU and fly that far off the top of people's heads. You could hang off the thing. The conversation we've had 5...
And laugh at the guys on the ground,
yes,
like helicopter pilots.
We did 5 interviews to Helen Gunn in the Transkei. We can't actually tell you where it is, but we went to a valley 4 days ago and we did 5 interviews with the locals, and one guy said they didn't come once, they came twice, and the second time they came so low he had a team of oxen that split his plough in half running through the fences, and they were laughing at his strife through the windows of the helicopter. And he didn't make that up. He didn't lie. It's like, you can't lie, this man. He's just telling us how it was. And we saw skin infections. Everyone's got diarrhea. They've got coughs and chests. Their water source is polluted with it, because we on Google Earth in this valley, we noticed 19 tributaries coming into their water source. It heads down to the sea, which of course is a marine national park. And it goes on and on and on. It's been going on for 15 years, and there's the cops on their off days. The minute we got there, we smuggled our way in and we put I Love Dagga stickers on the helicopters. And we put it up on Facebook and tagged some people, and we hoped that it would be our calling card. So we literally went next door to we stayed next door to where the cops were. And we kept going in there for dinner. And then 3 nights in, maybe, the head waiter came up and said, "Are you the guys that put the stickers on helicopters?" I said, "Yeah, we are." And he said, "Well, the place is crawling with cops and they know who you are." And he said, "Well, can we have a table right in the middle, please?" So we did. We sat right in the middle of the cops, and they just turned a blind eye, because they don't really know what to do, because they just pull "it's my job." That's what they say. But it's time to stop all of that "it's my job" cack. It can't be just your job to spray hapless people and their oxen. They can't hide behind "it's my job" anymore, I'm afraid, because I'm on it this year. And I will go back and shoot another 30-minute documentary if somebody gives me the money, honey. It was interesting. I'm right in the thick of it. I've been editing it for 2 days now, and we're going to come out with a 15-minute thing by the end of the weekend that I hope will be picked up by Reuters this time, because it's a gross violation of every single environmental impact treaty there is. There isn't any assessments. There is nothing. It's the South African Police Service doing what they've done for 20 years, totally above the law. And it's time to stop. I'm sick of it. Anyway, that's my rant over.
Thank you.